before we introduce him onto court, I'd like to introduce David Campion, who's the England national coach, and he'll give a little bit of background and hopefully a little bit of context to our presentation this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, David Campion. Hi, David. You've obviously been part of this person's life from a junior yourself. You've experienced the highs, you've experienced the lows. In your words, maybe if you could give a little bit of background and a little bit of context to what today's all about.
Yeah, I think you're quite right, Paul. We talk about the players and the success of the players, and this person, Malcolm Willstrop, single-handedly has contributed probably the most that any coach or any person has contributed to England squash's success. Through Lee Beachill, the world #1, James, his own son, now Sam Todd, who's destined for the top, and not just that, the volume of players that have come through Pontefract that are now contributing to the system, the tournament scene, the coaches, myself as national coach, Paul Hornsby in New Zealand, Andrew Cross, the Malaysian national coach. The list goes on and on. As I said, we do talk about the players, but in the background, Malcolm has done some incredible things, and England squash are hugely appreciative of what he's allowed England to enjoy over the last generations. And it's not just been the last decade; it's several decades. It's incredible, really. So that's why we're here today. We'd just like to recognise his contribution.
So, ladies and gentlemen, will you please show your appreciation? Let's invite him onto court. Malcolm Willstrop. I think all too often a failing of this sport is that we see some great players come and go, and we never really have the opportunity to say thank you and acknowledge their career. And again, I think it's nice that England squash now have sort of taken it upon themselves really to start to recognise, appreciate, and recognise properly the contributions of individuals such as Malcolm. So Malcolm, we see you in the corner at these sort of championships, but all of your work really is sort of done away from, from an environment like this. What is the reason, not just for your success, but for your continued sustained success?
Probably like most players would say, a lot of it's down to hard work and being there for people. And then I think probably recognising talent is a factor, and certainly when you're dealing with the sort of players that David referred to, like Lee Beachill and James and other players, I think spotting that they're a bit different. But then in life, you're not likely to come across players or not just players, musicians, academic children, whoever, who are outstanding. So it's been my good fortune that some of those have crossed my path, because I think that's luck. No matter how hard you work, how much you love the game, Lee Beachill might never have come my way. Another coach sent him to me when he was 7, and from that became a world #1, but he might not have come my way. So I think whatever you're doing in life, it's the crossing of the paths that counts to a great deal, then the hard work, being there for people, loving the game, which I do.
From the outside looking in, I think one of the most defining features that I recognise, and I think a lot of people recognise, is all of the players that you have and all of the players that have reached certain levels, they seem to play with their own particular style. Whereas I think often a failing of some coaches is that it's almost sort of one technique, one style of play fits all. Is that a fair reflection in terms of what you try to do in your philosophy?
Very much so. I think when I first started coaching about 100 years ago, I cloned players, and I quickly recognized that wasn't right. So what I try to do now is give them a foundation and a discipline of hard work, and let them then be themselves, so that I hope Lee Beecher looks different from James Willstrop, James Willstrop looks different from David Campion or Cassie Jackmore or other players that I've been associated with. And I think, without pushing it too hard, that is the case, that they are themselves, they express themselves, but you give them a framework, technique, whatever, and they become themselves. They express themselves on here, not you.
And in terms of a legacy, how would you like to be remembered, and what legacy would you like to leave, not just for England squash, but for squash in general?
Sounds a bit like an obituary, doesn't it? I mean, I feel to a point, you know, this thing looks a bit rigged, doesn't it? He's my stepson. James is coming on later, and now it's like, we'll say farewell just in case he doesn't appear tomorrow. I can assure you, I'm working just as hard. I've got some cracking young players. I've no intention of giving up, so that's for sure. But legacy, I don't know. I'd like to think that the players I have give back to the game in the way they conduct themselves on the court, I think probably. We all owe to our sport, especially the players who've made it. I do, we all owe. Give back by playing honestly, playing fairly, competing hard. We don't want soft players. Behaving, respecting officials. All those things are very important to me. And we have some very bad examples in sport nowadays. Let's not let squash go that way.
And David, sort of handing over to you, maybe, you know, it's a very special way that you've decided to sort of mark this occasion, and in your words, maybe you could give a little bit of an explanation.
Okay, so we thought about getting Malcolm a present, but Malcolm doesn't like presents. So what's very dear to Malcolm's heart is the president of Pontefract's foundation, the Pontefract Sport of Education, and England Squash would like to contribute to that foundation. And yeah, maybe Malcolm, you could talk a little bit about what you do there.
I mean, some of you will be aware of the wonderful schemes they have in America, the urban schemes, which street squash in New York is the most famous, where they give children of deprived backgrounds or who wouldn't have the opportunity to play a game like squash, that opportunity. In America, they carry them through educationally to universities and everything, which is wonderful. And when I go there, I try to get involved with that. In Pontefract now we have an education and squash foundation or sport foundation, which has been going for 3 or 4 years now, and we're particularly attached to one school. Airedale is from a relatively deprived area. They come in every Wednesday, 20 of them, between probably 9 and 11, and girls and boys, and they're coached at squash for half the session, and the other half they explore probably things like squash venues like New York. Then they'll explore New York, then they will write about that, and at half time they switch over and the other half are coached. So 20 children who would never see the game get the opportunity to play squash, and I must say they're wonderful children. And if I can just quote, we take them to British Opens, took them to the World Championship, where happily Ali Farag and Noor El-Shabini were by, so they signed their programs for them. But we took 6 of the ones that showed most talent at squash and the 2 most deprived. And then they wrote about their experiences. One of the deprived little boys wrote that it was the best day of his life. And that's enough, isn't it? If one boy, one child, writes that he's had the best of his life, and hopefully that's part of what we do at the foundation. And every year there'll be another 20, or even sometimes twice a year another fresh 20 come in, and we leave them with a basic knowledge of the game. So wherever they go in life, there'll be a squash club, they can make friends, whatever. So it's a very, very part of the work we do at Pontefract, and it means a great deal to me, just as obviously trying to produce players to play for England, for Yorkshire, whatever, but our work with the foundation is equally important. Thank you, David.
Okay, thank you, Malcolm. So that concludes why we're here with Malcolm. I'll maybe hand back to Paul and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
So, ladies and gentlemen, again, please show your appreciation. David Campion and Malcolm Willstrop.